Welcome back to another DPS analytic video. This is going to be the fourth week for Phase 5 of Blackwing Lair. Looking at all percentiles, we can see that the demo lock continues to climb past everyone, according to this median DPS. Everything else is very much the same as last week. The Ellie Shaman has moved a bit closer to the Destruction lock, and now we also have a couple more logs from the BM Hunter and the Sub Rogue moving up a couple positions as well. Looking at max percentile, we'll see a big jump in rankings. The Ret Paladin has taken the Demo Lock's position, and then the Feral Druid has went down a whole 2 steps. They were second place last week, and now they are in 4th. Marksman Hunter has went up a couple spots, taking the position of the Fire Mage. The Frost Mage has went up a couple spots, probably around like right here. They were a little bit under the LA Shaman last week, and now they are above them just a little bit. Arms went up a little bit, and the Melee Hunter went down. They were probably around where the Marksman Hunter is, and now they are right here in the middle. Moving on to 95 percentile, the Arcane Mage went back up to their top 5 spot, taking the spot of the Melee Hunter, which is now right here, only a couple spots down. The rest of the DPS that are in the top 5 were in the top 5 last week. Ellie moved up closer to closing this gap next to the Destruction Warlock, and Enhance also moved up a couple spots compared to last week. And if I'm not mistaken, the Shadow Priest has moved up a little bit as well, not really taking a new ranking, but gained a couple points as well. Moving on to each fight specifically, we're going to start with Razor Gore, still dominated by the Arcane Mage. And if we look at max percentile, still seeing a totally different story, but the Arcane Mage definitely catching up to the Fire Mage, which I was not expecting to see. I said this before, the Assassination Rogue has an incredible front load of bursty cooldowns, and short fights like Razor Gore are where they're going to excel, and same for the Feral Druid as well as the Fury Warrior. Moving on to the Veilstraws fight. Fire Mage just taking over, getting so much benefit from that burning adrenaline, and arguably the same 5 classes as last week. If we look at 95, we're going to get a totally different picture here, with the Feral Druid taking that #1 spot. But like I say every week, the classes that benefit from this burning adrenaline buff are going to be in the top 5 every single time. Even if we look at lower percentiles, like 90 percentile, you will still likely see the same top 5 specs, even the Fire Mage competing with the Ellie Shaman in the lower tiers. And if we look at 70 percentile, it's a little bit different, but we do see the same 4 classes right there. Bird Lord, max percentile, we now have the Ret Paladin on top. Demo Lock, not too far behind. They were competing for that first place spot every week. Going to 95, arguably the same classes as last week, the Demo Lock and the Shadow Priest, about the same as the following week. Fire Maw dominated by your melee specs, but your Arcane Mage is proving that wrong, and same for the Demo Lock. The Demo Lock was the only caster DPS that was in this top 5 or even top 10 spot as of last week. Going to max percentile, definitely a big difference here compared to where the melee DPS are falling versus the 2 caster DPS, which it isn't that bad. It's a lot closer than it was in the previous weeks. They are starting to catch up to these melee classes, but melee just excel on a fight like Fire Maw. The Ebon Rock and Flame Gore fight still being destroyed by the Fury Warrior. The Demo Lock is definitely still very competitive, and same for that Combat Rogue. Ret Paladin definitely giving them a run for their money, and followed by that is the Assassination Rogue. Looking at 95 percentile, you still have the Demo Lock beating the Fury Warrior on this encounter, and right behind that is the Combat Rogue. Moving on to Crow Mag, still dominated by the Mage. Fire Mage is just incredibly overpowered on this fight due to the spell vulnerabilities. Looking at max percentile, we're going to see a very similar story going forward. Ignite with a fire vulnerability is just unmatched, and I don't think that any class is going to come close to the Mage on this fight. And really surprising to me that the Assassination Rogue is benefiting so much from that nature vulnerability, considering they can only cover 1 spell school compared to some of these other classes that can go and cover multiple spell schools. It's very interesting to me to see them this far up. And I guess you could say the same for the Survival Hunter. They can only cover nature vulnerability as well, versus all of these other specs that have some kind of hybrid spell or multiple different spells that they can cast to cover different vulnerabilities. And then Nefarian, about the same as last week as well, starting to really be similar DPS numbers across the board. Your Mage is not doing so well in this fight, but your Demo Lock still shining above everyone else when it comes to that 95. But looking back at the 100 percentile, Fire Mage doing the best out of the Mage specs, but still falling short compared to everyone else. Marksman Hunter being very dominant on this single target fight, now that we no longer count the ads. And that's about it for this video. I'll be making another DPS analytic video every single week, so be sure to like and subscribe for those future videos. Comment down below what you'd like to see next, and as always, I will see you in the next one.